Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. My name is Mars, and today we're going to be doing the complete guide for Myra. Now, Myra is not a new unit, but she did recently get some free ability enhancements that have absolutely catapulted her to the top of the tiers of healers. She really is... I guess the best way to describe it is she went from one of the best healers in the game to pretty much inarguably the best healer in the game, and she's going to be extremely powerful for a long time to come. So this guide's going to dive into kind of her skill sets and some optimal rotations you can take and some of the ways that you can use her, because I was using Myra before, but now she's basically the only healer that I take because holy crap, she's so good. Now, speaking of good stuff, her STMR was buffed. It was really kind of lame before. It was just an auto spirit buff that was pretty weak. I think it only buffed your spirit by 100% or something like that, so a lot of people were like, well, that's terrible. But now they added auto limit to it, which is awesome. So auto limit on a 150 spirit staff that auto buffs your spirit, really quite handy. Yeah, and one other thing that's unique about Myra compared to other healers, she can equip a shield, which is super handy for elemental resistance, and she can also equip daggers, which is great for high tide stuffs, and we'll kind of get into how that helps her kit here in a minute. So Myra, like all other healers, she has access to a bunch of white magic, but for the most part you probably won't use it. The only time I use her white magic is when I need to do like a dual cast Dispel with a heal or with a re-raise. She can also remove your breaks with these skills, but again, you probably won't use them that much. They are handy in the case that you need them. Most of the time, you won't be using them. Now, what makes Myra awesome is all of these abilities that she can multicast with her playlist skill. We have a whole bunch of options. I think one of the ones that was buffed that is now a lot more interesting is album cover. This nullifies a lot of important status ailments, as well as break immunity, as well as charm immunity. So this is really quite good. Charm immunity that you can multicast with stuff is really good, so you can use that on turn 1 to help prevent stuff from your party. And intro is the first of her songs. Now, her song mechanic is what makes Myra unique. Every turn that you use one of her songs, she unlocks another song variant that has an increased power to it. And the thing that they buffed with her that made her so good is that all of her song abilities now heal in addition to increased effects. So before they didn't always heal, which made it hard to keep up her songs because sometimes you had to choose healing instead of singing. But now you can just choose singing and no worries. And some people have said, oh, well, it doesn't look like it heals that much, but it heals more than enough. 6414 is what that healed on her for her first song, which may not look like a lot, and it's really not that much, but it tends to be about all you need, at least for your damage dealers and for your supports and stuff. The good news is her better songs do heal for more. So you can see we unlocked Interlude from the previous song, so we'll use that, and it just gives you increasing buffs as well as cleansing ailments. It also gives you MP with some of the songs, but the big thing is that it buffs and it heals. Now, if you're not sure you're getting enough heals out of it, you can use Hit Single, which will do some on-demand healing as well as apply a regen to the party. And regens are really important if you're fighting bosses that have counterattacks, because if your units take counterattack damage, that means they're going into the next phase without being fully healed up. Regens allow you to be fully healed before diving into the next phase, so that's really handy for that. So big buffs, and that one healed a lot more. That was 14,000 healing. That was great. And then of course the regen applied as well. So as you can see, we have main verse ready to go. This is also a heal, a buff, fills the LB gauge, and most of her songs do fill the LB gauge, if not all of them if I remember right. So that's super handy for keeping LB gauges filled. And speaking of LB, For You is her Entrust Skill. This is amazing. This is probably the main reason I love using Myra, is because I can multicast Entrust with her, and this Entrust also gives her a big limit burst fill rate buff. So a lot of times I'll be using her with maybe a high tide dagger or something like that, to help get her going, and as she goes, she can just start entrusting my units left and right, because limit bursts are getting more and more powerful, so the more you can keep them up, the more you can get the use out of them. And with Myra, I mean, there's no better unit to do that. Now obviously I can't entrust myself to show it off, but one of the other skills I can show off is Harmony, which is one of the only charm removal sources in the game. So that's really handy to keep around, because she herself is immune to charm, if I remember correctly. Now one of the other things that you can do is, and this was something I didn't even think about when I first had her, but you can see this turn we have outro ready to go, and that means, you know, outro, that's when the song's ending. You're gonna have to start your song over again. Now what you can do is actually start the intro to the next song this turn, and that's going to mean that you're not really going to have downtime with her songs, because you can always use a song, but intro is her weakest song, so you can get that out of the way early. It just provides that little bit of healing, and now you're ready to go with your second song following. So you have the better breaks, or the better buffs from outro, and now you're ready to go with interlude this turn, which is a little trick that I sometimes like to do. Now other skills that she can multicast include Reflect, which I've never personally used with her, but it's there if you want to use it. Behind the Scenes is one that they changed, and I'm so glad that they did. Behind the Scenes now is a single target re-raise. Previously it was a single target raise, which was okay, but we already had Save Me, which is an AoE full life. So most of the time, you know, yeah, you could use Behind the Scenes for single target raise, but it was just a cheaper MP option of Save Me. Now they've made Behind the Scenes a re-raise, which dramatically increases Myra's versatility in combat. Yeah, just ridiculous. Myra went from awesome to just ridiculous, like almost must-pick status. So her other abilities that you can go ahead and weave in there include Audition. Audition just is an MP restore over time. Another skill that you can multicast is her Fighting skill. This deals magic damage, and it activates a barrier, and if I remember right, it's a Bolting Strike frame ability. So as a Bolting Strike frame ability, that means she has a whole bunch of units that she's able to chain up with. But I've never really found myself using it, because, you know, most of my damage dealers tend to have everything that they need. But it's there if you need it. Now, her cooldown skills went from not being dual castable at all to all of them being multicastable, which is awesome. Her first one is Live Concert, which is an AoE re-raise, and it activates a barrier on allies. This is really handy because she has single target re-raise, but no AoE re-raise aside from that one, so that's a really handy one to be able to pull out when you're going to cross a threshold, or when you have, you know, some big damage coming in and you're not sure if you can make it. Now her other two cooldown skills, oh, and the thing about Live Concert, it's a 5-turn cooldown, which is really, really short for an AoE re-raise cooldown. Most of the time they push like 10 turns in length, so this is really quite good. Now our other cooldowns include Roaring Crowd. This increases light and fire resistance for the party, adds 30% damage mitigation, and fills the limit burst gauge for all allies, which is really nice. I think the thing I use the most out of this is the mitigation, but a lot of times I'm using a mitigator anyways, especially with someone like Charlotte. Now Piercing Voice is the one that I've found to be more handy in terms of setting up some one-turn kill potential. I believe the Defense and Spirit breaks on this were only 60% before, but now they're 70% for one turn, and it imperils fire and light by 100% for one turn as well. So this is really good for a single turn burst potential, and it is available on turn 1, just like all of her cooldown skills, giving her quite a bit of flexibility in terms of helping your damage with, helping your party with some damage. And of course her abilities all have like the coolest animations and stuff. Now the last ability I want to highlight is one that I think makes her truly unique, is her Limit Burst. Now her Limit Burst is really cool looking. Rose petals that looks like hearts and all this other stuff. It does many things. It removes all debuffs from all allies. Now that includes, you know, status ailments and breaks, and it also removes imperils, which is really unique. Imperil removal is quite rare. At first I thought it would be something very useful for trials and things like that, but I've found that a lot of bosses just reapply imperils like every turn. So it doesn't make that much of a difference, but if there's a fight where you're like, oh crap, I'm going to take a spicy hit because I have an imperil in my party, you can remove that with this. It also removes status ailments. Oh wait, I said that. Yeah, but it's listed separately. Anyways, one thing that it does not remove that I would hope it did is it doesn't remove imperils to ailments. So, you know, like Orthos and Typhon and Lich, they can imperil your susceptibility to different status ailments. I would have thought that Myra could remove those, but unfortunately, she cannot. But the additional thing that her Limit Burst does is it removes Charm as well, and it increases resistance to Charm as well as resistance to breaks. It also throws up a big heal over time as well as a refresh, you know, MP refresh over time. So it does a lot of amazing things. So overall, Myra's kit, amazing. Definitely, in my opinion, the best healer in the game by kind of a long shot. I haven't taken any other healer since her. So let's go ahead and dive into a few builds so that we can talk about how you can make use of her. So with the builds, you know we like to start things off with a little bit of a whale tier. This is a build to kind of dream for. 13,000 HP, 1800 spirit, full status ailment immunity, a whole bunch of resistances. This really is just an awesome build. I think what makes it shine is she does have a lot of high tide effects from like Pirate Jake's Ring and Dream of the Faith, and then you have other stuff like Planet Whisperer and Myra's mic stand that give you auto limit. So all that stuff together really makes this build awesome. But of course, a lot of these items are STMRs, a lot of them are limited time, like Pirate Jake's Ring. Everlasting Kindness is Chow's STMR, so most people are obviously not going to have that. But this is kind of, you know, if I'm going to run a Myra, this is probably something that I would consider. But if you don't have stuff like this, not to worry. Another build that can work quite well is this one here. And this is probably one I would recommend for general application because, you know, even though we don't have as high of spirit because we're not using a staff, we are using a pair of daggers with the High Tide Plus enhancement on them. This is definitely a build that I recommend for a lot of people because it allows you to do a lot of her entrusting, which the entrusting is one of her best features as a healer. It really is awesome. So having the ability to get her limit burst filled more quickly, more regularly, using a couple of High Tide daggers is definitely recommended. I threw on a couple of Genbu rings because you can throw on whatever defensive items you want in those slots, or if you have stuff with high tide or auto limit, that works too. Of course, you have her TMR equipped to the head slot to activate her trust passive. Now, one item that not a lot of people know about is Accelerating Power. This is 100% high tide and it is available from the Fat Chocobo shop. Other items include Hero's Vow Light for some extra spirit and high tide, as well as Pure White Blessing. So tons and tons of options for Myra. And of course, if you don't have Barrel's STMR, which is one thing that I have in this, you could replace it with any dagger at all. I just threw in Barrels so that people can remember that there's a really good dagger with a lot of spirit out there that you can throw on your healer / support units, especially once you get that high tide buff on it. So the next question everybody wants to ask is, how worth it is Myra? She is probably the most worth it healer in the game, and in fact one of the most worth it units overall. The things she can enable for your party are quite expansive, and she's not going to fall out of use or fall out of the meta anytime soon. I know some people have mentioned healers such as Light Warrior Lena, who will be coming relatively soon. She's also very strong with triple white magic and a lot of other similar utility to Myra. But if you have Myra, you probably don't need to pull for another healer anytime soon. She provides so much in her kit, is exceptionally good at pretty much anything she puts her mind to, and someone that I would highly recommend for anybody who has her. Now, is she worth a unit of choice ticket to get her to 7 stars? Most of the time I hesitate to say yes for healers. Myra is one of the few where I would say, yeah, she may be worth it for you if that's a role that you don't have. Most of the time, I think unit of choice tickets are best reserved for breakers, damage dealers, and tanks. However, in Myra's case, she does provide enough that if you have some of those other roles covered, you definitely can consider her for it. So that pretty much covers it. Let me know what you think of Myra and her new ability enhancements down in the comments below, and I'll see everybody in the next video.